Okay. What's the difference in pre-sales when it comes to Assalamu alaikum, by the way? Welcome. Feel free to come to the front if you want. We're having a nice little conversation here, so it doesn't have to be very far. Um, what's the difference between pre-sales, the way you understand it, with doing demos and selling the product, compared to when you're having to sell a service? So what does pre-sales look like when you are working for a consultancy? Is it still, because you're not selling the product, right? The product is being sold by Salesforce, for example, right?
But you have to show that you have an expertise that will fulfill the customer needs.
Exactly. How do you do that?
Customization.
Customizations, okay. But how do you know that what you can deliver is what they want?
By knowing what they want first.
How?
Gathering data.
Good. Yeah, gathering data, right? And this is really what pre-sales is all about. Pre-sales is about like understanding the entire process. It's about discovery, right? Discovery, discovery, discovery. You go in, you have conversations with people, right? So the initial part would be, for example, yes, we are interested in having Salesforce, or we're interested in having one of the products of Own, or we're interested in, we already have Salesforce, but we want to implement CPQ, for example, right? Or we want to implement DocuSign or Congo for document generation, right? But what is it that you want, right? That's just not, it's not just saying, oh, hey, we want this isn't enough. So you go in, you have conversations with the end users, the business users, the managers. You do your discovery, right? You do your requirements gathering to try and understand exactly what it is that they need, right? And that's really and truly when you're looking at pre-sales overall. That's really what you want to be able to do. You want to try and get as much information out of the client as possible, or the potential client as possible, so you can kind of come up with understanding exactly what solutions to propose, right? And also not just what solutions to propose, but also how to propose it, how long it's going to take to implement it, right? What resources are needed to do the actual implementation? Do you need a consultant? Do you need a developer? Do you need an architect? How long for each one of those, for example, right? And this is really where pre-sales comes into play. Like I've been doing implementation, I would argue, for about 5.5, 6 years, right? I've worked on dozens of implementations, from really small ones that we finished in about 3 days to other ones where I was on site at a client for a year and we still were not done, right? And we were extending it for another year. And one of the things that I've always seen is most of the time when we have implementations or projects that we are delivering, they were almost always oversold, right? There were too many things were promised up front. When they had questions and they got their requirements, the person that was selling the project was essentially saying, yeah, of course Salesforce can do that. And yes, of course Salesforce can do this. And most of the time they were telling the truth. But yes, you can do it. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can do it within the budget that you have or in the amount of time that you want to do it in, right? So most of the time the projects were oversold, they were overpromised, and then when it came to, it got thrown over the fence to us to now deliver it, and then they kind of became like, okay, cool, how do we deliver what they want in the amount of time that they want us to do it in, right, for the amount of money that they wanted to do it? And most of the time, we ran into trouble. And the trouble kind of started from the beginning of the project, right, when we basically had to give the client a reality check to say, hey, I know you've been told X, or maybe we didn't even know this. Maybe we just been, okay, hey, this is the project. And then we have to tell them, yeah, we can do that, but it will take 3 times as long, right? Or yeah, right? Or we can do this, but if you want it in the same amount of time, okay, fine, it won't take 3 times as long, but it will cost you 3 times as much because we have to put 3 times as many people on it to deliver it in the same amount of time, for example. And then the friction starts from the beginning of the project immediately, right? And then it's, okay, great. Well, now the customer's expectations have not been managed. You don't really know where to kind of put this forward. And we always got into trouble with a lot of these things. So I got really annoyed by this stuff, right? I didn't like it. I was like, no. So why is it that projects are being sold without an actual experienced person going in there doing the requirements gathering? Why is it left to salespeople, sales managers? Why is it being left to project managers? Anyone else? Why is it being left to anyone that has not done an implementation before, right? So that's really one of the things that you want to be able to look at is what is the implementation experience and how do we do this? And when you're presenting the customer, when you try to give them the value proposition, right? It's understanding and saying, well, first of all, can they trust you? right? Can you be one of their trusted advisors? What are your credentials? It was really easy for me to put it up on my slide and say, great, I am 24 times certified, right? Immediately, that gives me some level of credibility with the customer. They don't know that I've never done a project, right? It could be true. I mean, yes, I've done dozens of projects, but just because I've put a certain title on, or just because I've done a certain thing, or just because you're working for a certain organization, that brings you some level of credibility, right? And when you are presenting the solution that you want to present, you can feel free. When you're presenting the solution that you want to present, it's all about how do you deliver that, right? It's all about how do you present things in a certain way that doesn't just show the technical solution, because if I speak to a customer service agent, for example, they don't really, okay, if you explain to them all the benefits of Service Cloud and how great Service Cloud is, that doesn't matter much to them, right? The technical solution doesn't matter very much at all. It's really about what value can they get out of the solution that you're providing, right? And that's really what it is that you want to be able to go and sell. So I saw one of this, and one of the things that people we're kind of looking at is what's involved in the overall process, and also what does a person in pre-sales actually do, right? And this is the one on the right I like more because one, the first things that you have to kind of remember is when you're doing pre-sales, you are in sales. You are selling, right? You're selling a product, you're selling a service, right? You're selling resources, time, effort, whatever it may be. You are in sales. It may be technical sales, but it's still sales. So you have to remember that you are in sales and you are a salesperson, right? Well, on the flip side of that, when we come back to that credibility again, is as a pre-sales person, you are also dealing as being the actual expert, right? So the IT part, the engineering part, the knowledge that you have on Salesforce or any of the other products that it may be, that's the other part of the sales. You always have to kind of balance the two in your mind because these are all the activities that you're going to be involved in. And the bit that was surprising for me, which I didn't expect when I went into pre-sales, was for whatever reason, I ended up getting into marketing and product management, right? Because as the expert on the product, as the expert on the solutions, as the expert on the actual point that you want to deliver, you still want to sell, but you also have to try and sell without speaking directly to the people that you're going to be speaking to. So you have to work together with marketing, right? And marketing wants content created. They want videos, short videos. They want diagrams. They want blogs written, articles, whatever it may be. So you end up doing a bit of content creation as well and somehow getting into the product advocacy and the marketing side. So there's a number of different things, but one of the things that allows me to do is as a pre-sales person, it then says, okay, great. You never stay stagnant. You never stay still in the same thing that you're doing. You're not doing the same job every single day. And that's really the part that I like. Like as a person who used to do implementations, I really didn't like being on site at a customer for an entire year. It was boring, right? It was really boring to do the same project and if like knowing exactly what you're going to be doing for the next 52 weeks is very, very boring, right? Because you have your entire backlog, you know exactly what it is that you need to deliver, when it needs to be delivered by, and what you're going to be doing. Whereas pre-sales was the bit that allowed me to not be bored, right? It allowed me to constantly have 3 or 4 different clients, right? And even though they all want to use Sales Cloud, for example, or they all want to use Service Cloud, they each had their own requirements, right? Each person wants to do it slightly different, or they had a different problem or a different use case. So it essentially meant that I had to go and problem solve all the time and be quite quick in how I'm going to be doing the problem solving. It allowed me to not be bored. It allowed me to constantly be on the go with different things. It allowed me to travel, right? One of the best things when I got into pre-sales, which I genuinely couldn't believe, was I left the UK. I lived in London at the time. Left the UK, jumped on a plane, went to Barcelona, right? Got there the night before, had a demo at 9 a.m., did the demo, and that was it. That's all I had to do, right? And then I had the rest of the day, and I was able to go and either stay in Barcelona for a little while or come back. But you get to go to places. I've been like to so many different countries because at the time, pre-COVID, right? Like you got to travel. People wanted to see a lot more people in person. The other bit that I really got to do and really enjoy is, especially if you're trying to progress in your technical skill, right? For those people who want to go from consultant to or developer to architect, right? And for those people who are an architect and want to become a CTA, right? The certified technical architect, pre-sales is essentially preparing you to do the CTA, right? getting that certified technical architect, the pinnacle of the certification, the one that everyone wants, right? It essentially prepares you for the CTA, because the way that the CTA is structured is they give you a problem, they give you a long list of requirements, right? In those requirements, you have about 3 hours to come up with a solution and a presentation on how to position that solution to the actual judges. And when you're doing pre-sales, that's what you're doing every single day, right? Every single day, you're getting a list of requirements from customers. You're having to do a solution in a short period of time, and after that, obviously, you're able to then move on, right? So from that perspective, you then think to yourself, okay, cool. If you still want to get into pre-sales, or you think pre-sales is interesting, right? How do I get into it, and why would I want to do that? Why would I want to leave my technical job that I have, that I've studied so long for, or why would I leave the consultancy that I'm currently doing, or whatever else that I may be going into? If I'm a consultant, or I'm an analyst, or I'm a developer, I'm an architect, why would I want to move into pre-sales, right? I'm having to learn a whole new thing, and that's not necessarily the truth, right? There's actually a common framework that you can kind of have, the common foundations between the skills that you've already built, and then using that to actually start selling based off of that, right? Uh, the only thing that's a little bit difficult is shifting your mindset. It took me a little while to understand that the customer that I'm selling something to doesn't really care about how the product does exactly what it does. They didn't care about the specific features and, you know, the flow that I built for them and how it was all done and the amount of Apex code that was written or whatever else. They didn't care about any of that, right? They cared about what value does it bring them, right? So I had to shift my mindset to say, okay, it's not just about depth, it's also about breadth. How much do I know about the Salesforce ecosystem? How much do I know about how each of the different parts of the Salesforce ecosystem can be put together for a solution for the actual customer itself? Right? Things you do every single day in, day out in consulting, but also in some of the other areas. So you get to leverage your knowledge, whether it's architectural knowledge or whether it's consultancy knowledge or your knowledge as a developer or an analyst or as a tester, whatever it may be, whatever role that you are playing, you can use that knowledge when you get into pre-sales, right? And it allows you to be able to address some of the transition challenges of understanding that you do have to kind of shift your mindset. So the last point is the biggest point and the most important point. So I'll start with that first and I'll go with the other ones, which is the earning potential. I have found, and I think if you ask anyone that you speak to that has ever worked in pre-sales will tell you that the earning potential is just so much better when you're in pre-sales compared to when you're actually doing the other jobs, right? And this is because normally you have your base salary, right? You get paid. But when you work in pre-sales, because you're part of the sales team, you also get either a bonus or a commission, depending on whatever the company wants to call it, right? So most salespeople have a 50-50 split, where their base salary is 50% and then the commission is the other 50% of their on-target earnings. When you're in pre-sales, it's either 80-20 or it's 70-30. Now, if you think, for example, right, so let's just say a very simple big number, $100,000 a year, right? 80,000 would be your base salary, 20,000 would be your bonus or your commission if you hit your targets. But the bit that you get on top of that is actually some of that can either be capped or uncapped. So you could be earning some more depending on the type of organization that you're going to be working for. So why not use it, right? Why not use the existing knowledge that you have as a developer, as a consultant, as an architect, as a tester, right? Whatever you're doing, your base salary is not going to go down. If anything, it's just going to go up, right? Because you get to have that the viable experience. But aside from that, career progression is the same thing, right? If you're working for a product company, you'll be called a sales engineer or a solution engineer. So you can go shorten to an SE. So you can be an SE, senior SE, lead SE, go into management. Same thing with if you're working for a consultancy. It's solution architect, senior solution architect, principal solution architect, distinguished engineers, as some companies like IBM like to call it because they like to have fancy titles for the people that work for them. But the one thing that you will always be guaranteed when you're working in pre-sales is that you're constantly learning. Right? I have never learned so much as I have when I was in the pre-sales role, more so because when I'm actually at an implementation role, I'm only exposed to a certain amount of things. Whereas pre-sales, I'm constantly having to, again, right, figure out which solutions and which products and how many different document generation tools are there in the ecosystem or how many different CPQ solutions are there, for example. Right? There's a number of different things. But to do that, you do need to kind of change the skills a little bit, right? It's a balance. You need both the technical proficiency and the Salesforce expertise. I think it's very difficult, personally, to go into pre-sales without it, right? If you try to go into pre-sales without any of that, then it becomes very difficult to estimate how long a project's going to take. right? It's very difficult to say, okay, great. Based off of these 20 requirements that you have, you need one architect for 2 hours a day, you need a developer for 6 hours a day, you need a consultant for 4 hours, and this is going to take 2 weeks. You need a project manager on top, right? It's very difficult to try and understand how to do all that if you've never done implementations before. If you don't understand some of the pitfalls, some of the downfalls, some of the challenges that come with doing some of these implementations, right? So there's a number of different things that you want to be able to do, but the biggest one for me always comes back to that business acumen and technical acumen, right? That balance. You're both a salesperson as well as a technical person, so to try and understand how to deal with that, right, is probably the biggest thing that you want to be able to kind of go and work for. And finally, I said it earlier, discovery, 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 right? Ask questions, ask why. Why is this particular requirement important for you? What does it allow you to do? How does it impact your customer's customer, for example? How does it impact the internal users? A number of those different things will allow you to go and deal with it. So this is kind of what I have in my head normally. I've got like, the road to kind of where I want to go to. And really when I'm looking at kind of the road ahead, I'm trying to think, well, the best thing to do is kind of embrace it, right? So get involved, right? Understand what the importance is of pre-sales. More and more organizations are getting this. When I was starting to do this a number of years ago, pre-sales was a big thing for product companies, right? They had sales engineers, solution engineers, whatever you want to call them. They weren't like that in the consultancy world, right? The consultancy world really didn't invest that much into having a dedicated person for pre-sales. That's kind of changing. I'm kind of seeing the ecosystem change a little bit more because the products are getting more complex, right? Salesforce is constantly either coming out with new solutions or buying new companies that have their own solutions, right? But it's getting more and more complex. The requirements of the users are becoming more and more complex. So every organization is now really seeing the value of having an experienced person doing the pre-sales and doing the estimation of the actual efforts, right? In addition to that, look, we've seen it before, right? We've seen that a lot of people are either being quite broad and becoming generalists, or they're being quite narrow and they're becoming specialists, right? Especially around a lot of the industry that you have, you want to be able to go and understand. Maybe you are a financial services expert, right? Or a banking expert or a manufacturing expert. Use that knowledge to what you have so you can go and understand as the role is evolving, how you can go and deal with a lot of these different things, right? And then finally, look, I genuinely believe pre-sales is the best job to have in the Salesforce ecosystem. If you're not in pre-sales already, please join it, right? I sincerely invite you to take action, explore the role, see if it's a good thing for you, see if you would enjoy it. And aside from that, I'm happy to take any questions, if there are any questions. If there are no questions, that's also okay. Feel free to ask me anything that you want. I have almost never said we can't do it. I've more often than not said we can't do it for the budget that they have, or we can't do it in the time that they have it. It's very little that you can't do in Salesforce, right? Almost with the amount of customization. But I'll be honest, when you're in sales, you're working with the salesperson, the AE, right? They are your partner, or the team that you're working with, they're your partner. Like you have to trust them as much as they trust you. If that doesn't work, if they have, gone completely crazy and want to say whatever they want to do, it's almost impossible, right? The current sales team that I work with at the moment, like we are actually have become really good friends, right? We go out for dinner together, we go out for lunch, coffee, whatever else it may be, and they trust me when I say, actually, you know what? I don't think this is the best approach. I think we should deliver this in this way. And worst comes to worst, just go to their manager in it and tell them off. Like, but it's no, it's about trust. It's you have to remember, as much as you want to believe in your technical solution, you are still part of the sales team. You are selling, right? Your ability to sell this product or this project is what's paying for the salaries of everyone else in the organization, right? Including your own, right? If this doesn't get sold, the company doesn't make enough revenue, and then obviously everyone else doesn't get paid. So it's good to make a good partnership with the salesperson.
Being a good pre-sale, is it more about the dialogue that you, I mean, what you will say, or how you will bring solutions, or about the knowledge?
Neither of those, I would say. Both of those are very, very important because it's you need the knowledge to be able to present. You need to be able to present well, right, so that the knowledge is carried over. The most important thing is actually understanding what's important to them and what value that brings. I could come up with the greatest implementation and solution ever. I could be the most amazing presenter. If it brings no value to the customer, it means nothing. Right? So the most important thing about being in pre-sales is understanding what matters to the customer, what's going to bring them value, what's either going to make their lives easier, allow them to do their job quicker, or allow them to save money. It's normally one of those three things, right? And if you are able to get all three, perfect. If you're able to get one of those three, better, right? But that's the most important thing for a pre-sales person, understanding the value that whatever you want to give to them, what does that mean to that person, right? What does that mean to the organization? But also, what does that mean to the individual that's actually making the decision? Right? So that's probably what I would say is the most important point. Yes, discovery, discovery, discovery. Right? Discovery is the most important thing in pre-sales. And the better you get at discovery, the easier it becomes. Like I have come to find that a lot of the times when I was doing discovery, they didn't end up being a workshop. I was genuinely just having conversations with people, right? And through the conversations with people, because it just became second nature for me. Yeah, I got used to it so much. It just became second nature to me. I wasn't asking a question and writing down the answer. It just became a genuine, natural conversation of me trying to understand what they do, what the pain points are, the challenges of what they're doing, right? How it could be better. And then if it did get better, what does that allow them to do, right? What's the benefit? What's the value of what they wanted to do that? So I have done discovery over breakfast coffee. I've done discovery. The weirdest place I've done discovery is on a train, right? Because we got stuck somewhere and we didn't have a chance to actually go to the meeting area that we wanted to go to, and we found out that we were both on the same train, so we were both going to be late. The customer was on the same train, I was on the same train. I was messaging him saying, "I'm sorry, my train is stuck, I'm going to be late." He said, "Oh, my train is stuck as well." We found out that we were both on the same train. I said, "No, what? Tell me what your seat number is." And we ended up and we had a conversation about for the entire train journey. By the time we actually got to the station, my discovery was done. I said to him, "Thank you very much. Let's go for coffee or let's go for lunch," and we can kind of do it. So it's just discovery. Discovery is the most important thing. Any other questions about anything to do with pre-sales, job, career? I'm happy to talk about money, whatever it is that you may want to understand or know. No? In which case, thank you very much.